It's time for the Hockey Writers Grind Line, a weekly show covering everything Detroit Red Wings. Brought to you by our own iconic top line of Wings writers. Sit back and enjoy the grind.
Welcome to the Hockey Writers Grind Line. I'm your host, Patrick Brown. I'm Kyle Knopp. I'm trying out my new Patrick Brown Halloween costume. And today we are joined by my line mate and Patrick's alternate captain, Devin Little. Devin, how are you?
I am doing good, Pat. Doing good, Kyle. Yes, it's great to see you.
And also joining us today to help me hold my hand as we walk through this, the host of hosts, the Red Wings expert and all-around awesome guy, Nolan Bianchi. Thank you for joining us, Nolan, formerly of Locked On Red Wings podcast. Nolan, how are you doing today?
Pretty good. I'm doing well. Yeah, you guys caught me. I tried to give up podcasting, but the second I thought I was out, you guys reeled me back in. So here I am. And I think my favorite thing about this, because this comes out Saturday, like tomorrow?
Correct. Yep.
So it's just a continuation of the daily podcast I was already doing. It was like no days in between. Like if you miss me for a day, you're in luck.
We got you.
Hey, we got to strike while the iron's hot. And let me tell you, you are a hot commodity right now. So, as Devin rightfully said right before we started recording, this is like getting Michael Jordan right after retiring from the Bulls. So thank you, Nolan. We are very excited about having you join us today.
And again, I will say what I said to him a couple minutes ago, and that is a stroke of ego I did not know I needed. So thank you for feeding the beast today. Somebody's got to do it.
Well, we will jump right in this week. Start out with our old favorite segment, one good, one bad from the past week. Just a reminder, the Red Wings had 3 games this week. Started out last Saturday on October 16th with a 3-1 win against the Canucks, trying to do some time travel right now. And then they followed that up with a 4-1 win over the Blue Jackets on Tuesday. And then we all saw the latest game, a 3-0 loss to Calgary. All of those games taking place at Little Caesars Arena. So one good, one bad from this past week. Nolan, let's start with you.
I would say one good would be the energy that they brought. And I know this is kind of a cop-out, but when they played that game against the Columbus Blue Jackets on Tuesday night, it was one of those games that it can kind of wreck your confidence to, be going up against a goaltender who's playing as well as Jonas Korpisalo. Thank goodness for their sakes that Thomas Greiss was keeping them in that game. So that helped definitely keep their confidence up. But what I loved most about their performance is that they were knocking on the door for 40 minutes. They don't get a goal. They come back into the third, and when they break through, it's not like a situation where it's like, ooh, can they hang on? It was a situation where they were like, okay, there we go. And then they kept coming, and they end up, obviously they had the empty netter at the end. But nevertheless, it was pretty encouraging to see them break through and then put the pedal to the floor. I would say one bad was just the sloppiness in the Calgary game. I don't really think they played all that bad outside of the turnovers. Like they ended up with 12 turnovers or 12 giveaways, 7 in the first period. That was kind of a focal point of that. And I mean, realistically, it was just a weird game. Like I hate to be an apologist for the loss, but they come in, they open pretty much the same exact way they do against the Columbus Blue Jackets. And then the only difference is Giovanni Smith decides to get in a fight. And for me, that was where all the momentum turned in that game. It just wasn't necessary. He gets his head bounced off the ice. Not a good fight for him. And then they were just playing a better team that could take advantage of the sloppiness later on in the period. And I think that got them down a little bit to go into the first period, losing 2-0. But at the end of the day, they just couldn't buy one. They had plenty of chances last night, but it was just those early giveaways that kind of put them in a hole that they weren't able to climb out of. And after, 4th game of the season, I guess you can't really blame them when they've been playing so many high energy, emotional games, kind of like Dylan Larkin said after last night.
Excellent points. All very good points. I think you're hit the nail on the head right there. Just they're coming out with so much energy, and to have 3 games in 1 week is kind of hard to keep that energy up consistently this early in the season. So great point, Nolan. Devin, how about to you? One good, one bad from this past week.
I'm gonna kind of cheat. One good. I'm gonna actually two goods real quick. First good is choo choo. Mr. Lucas Raymond scored his first career NHL goal, and it was a beauty.
Yes.
And here's to many, many more, Mr. Lucas Raymond. Speaking of great number 23s to start off his show. Now, the other good I want to shout out is not really what happened this week, at least for the Red Wings. I got tickets to next week's game against the Panthers. I haven't been to a game since the fall of 2018, so I am through the roof right now. Now, the bad news, the one bad, is that means I'm not going to be on next week's episode. So if you want to team me up for Explain Yourself right now, you got to wait a couple weeks. But no, in all seriousness, an actual one bad, I think Nolan honestly hit the biggest bad, and that was just kind of the overall sloppiness that we saw last night. And again, like was already said, you can't expect them to be full throttle for 82 games. They're just not that team quite yet. But I don't know. It was almost like a smack in the face. It was kind of a snap back to reality moment where it's like, oh yeah, this team isn't the Tampa Bay Lightning. They still make mistakes.
You know what I would equate it to? It's like it's a pitcher who they still had the command. They were still able to put the ball where they wanted it. Their arm was just a little tired, and guys were catching up to it, and that was really all.
That's a great analogy right there. You know, toward the end of a long outing for a pitcher, arms just getting a little tired. Command's there, but guys are now getting their bats around on the ball, and like, you know, we talked about in this podcast and other podcasts across the Hockey Writers, the Calgary Flames are a good team, and they're a type of team that will take advantage of turnovers and mistakes. And they showed that the other night. And I thought it was a really well played game. So there are some good takeaways from that. But yeah, both of you mentioned, you know, the energy just couldn't be sustained, and they were the type of team that bit the Wings in the butt for that. So thank you. Moving on, we're going to talk about the goalies from this past week. So a little refresher: Thomas Greiss was 2-0-0 with a 1.0 goals against average, giving up 2 goals in 2 games, and a .969 save percentage with almost 120 minutes of time on ice over those 2 games. And then Alex Nedeljkovic on the other side of that coin was 0-1-1, giving up 9 goals for a 4.41 goals against average and a .882 save percentage in 122 minutes and 24 seconds of time on ice. Impressions, thoughts on the goaltenders in the first, we'll go with the last 3 games in the first 4 games of the season total. Nolan, starting with you.
Well, Thomas Greiss is a monster. I think this should be his net, despite the fact that Nedeljkovic kind of did have that bounce back game that I think everybody was hoping for, to be able to say like, hey, he's going to be okay. But I know I probably shouldn't. I think Devin and I actually talked about this when he made his appearance on Locked On Red Wings. The preseason showing didn't necessarily scare me, but it was a good reminder that we really don't know what Alex Nedeljkovic is. And I think that is something that we really need to keep in mind over these next, couple of months, because when it gets into a situation where, you're kind of just being able to split time and stuff like that. Like I do think Thomas Greiss is the much better goaltender right now. Now, I will be curious to see if the balance ends up being a result of maybe the style of team they're playing. Alex Nedeljkovic likes to play very aggressive.
Yes.
Thomas Greiss doesn't necessarily. Like when Thomas Greiss isn't playing well, it's because he's overcommitting to things and he's sliding over too far and just little silly mistakes like that. But he has really, really tightened that up. And I think that this should be his crease going forward. But I will say Alex Nedeljkovic played a pretty strong game against the Calgary Flames on Thursday night. And so I really can't be upset with how he's performed. He kind of he got hung out to dry on both of those goals. And just, pucks, a pass to a wide open guy in the slot, and then a guy just cleaning up in the slot. You can't really blame him for that. And if that's the only goals he's going to let up, then it is what it is. So I was happy to see him kind of a bounce back game.
Absolutely. Good points. Devin, your thoughts and impressions?
Well, I think this is kind of a situation where the numbers don't exactly tell the whole story. I mean, at least in terms of Greiss, I think they do. I think he's playing out of his mind right now. And if it was me behind the bench, I wouldn't be going every other. I'd be giving Greiss a start until he doesn't play well. But that being said, you do want to give Nedeljkovic a chance to find his footing in Detroit. So I understand going back and forth. And to the point of the numbers not telling the whole story, yeah, he gave up 7 goals against Tampa Bay, but I don't think he played poorly in that game. I don't think he was like top notch by any means, but I think he played 50 really good minutes of hockey against the Lightning. And then the whole team kind of just took their foot off the gas once Larkin got kicked out of that game.
Yeah.
I think if Larkin stays in that game, I think they win. And I think Nedeljkovic's stats look a little bit better. I still want to see more from Ned, even going back to preseason, we haven't seen that Nedeljkovic that was a Calder finalist that season yet. And I do think that will take time. It took Greiss time last season to find his footing in Detroit. It took Bernier a season to find his footing in Detroit when he started. So, I think we've talked about this before on this show, where you just got to give Ned time to figure out his new team and figure out the new system and all that stuff. Once he gets settled in, I do expect those numbers to start heading north in the right direction.
Great observation, Devin. Like you said, it took all of those goalies, and it takes goalies a little more time, especially in the NHL, to really settle in and develop. And that's why looking and evaluating goalies in the preseason can always be somewhat of a crapshoot. And, Nolan, you also hit it on the head, and you talked about it on your podcast today as well, that Nedeljkovic does play in a more aggressive style of game than Greiss. And so he's at the top of his crease. He's challenging shooters more. And while that is kind of the new style of play in the NHL, there's still teams that can easily take advantage of that. I mean, the Tampa Bay Lightning, especially on the power play, I believe they had 3 power play goals that game. It's one of those, you have an aggressive goalie, they can move the puck so well, they're going to find that open seam and just take advantage. And like you both said, I think Nedeljkovic played really well the past couple games, even though his stats don't really reflect that. But this has to be Greiss's net moving forward. Now, the Red Wings do have a back-to-back coming up next weekend, I believe. So they will essentially, or it might be this weekend. I don't know. My days, My days are all over the place now, but they will have to, split time with that game. But I think with the 3 games this week, you have to give 2 of those 3 to Greiss. Sure. All right. So last section here before we take a little break, talking about team scrappiness. Is it sustainable over a full season? Do you like it? Love it? Hate it? What are your thoughts? Nolan, starting with you.
Like it, as long as they don't do it in the way that they did last night. Like that was the way, if it's warranted, yes. I like that they showed that when they get hit, that they can throw a punch back and then put you in a noogie, and then you get them like that. Like, but don't throw that first punch, because you are this team is at the end of the day just not as good as other teams around the league. And I think when you just get baited into being a psycho or just getting crazy or getting after the energy right away, like what happened in that Calgary game. I mean, Matthew Tkachuk came and he took a nice little chop at Lucas Raymond. Like that should have gotten a response instead of nothing happening early in the game. Just, hey, let's fight off the face off for funsies. And so I think that as long as it's warranted, then it's okay. But I also think that you can end up with a lot of situations like you did on Thursday, to where you just fire them up and you can't really ever get on their emotional or whatever level you want to call it, because I do think that you have to be in like a certain kind of state to get to that place. It's not, it's something that builds over time through the course of a game. And like I said, I'm glad that they showed that when the chips are down, they can play that type of game and end up doing it better than the other team. But also, for sustainability reasons, I don't think it's smart to go looking to play that type of game on a nightly basis.
That's a great point, Nolan. I think you're absolutely right there. That's something that you have to find that balance. There has to be a line that you walk, and the team has to find that balance between the two. Devin, you scrappiness. What are your thoughts? Do you like it? Love it? Hate it?
I think Nolan nailed it. It's a situational thing. If you get pushed, you have to push back. Otherwise, you're going to keep getting pushed. And then the next team's going to push you. And then the next team's going to push you. So for them to have, really right off the bat in these first 4 games shown that they'll fight back, that sends a message. And I'm glad that they're doing it. And I think that hopefully that they're doing it this early means that they won't have to do it for the next 78 games. But excuse me. Now, that being said, I mean, you do love to see it because, I mean, if you've ever been in a hockey arena when a fight breaks out, it's electric, right?
Yeah.
These games have been really fun to watch, not just because the team looks like they actually have some skill now, but because they're willing to fight for themselves and defend their teammates. You want to see that no matter what team you cheer for, because you don't want to see your team get pushed around. We always talk about the Jamie Benn incident from last season with Larkin, and obviously the injury was bad, but the thing that always got my goat about it was that no one even shoved Ben after it happened. He skated away and then, it was done and Larkin was gone for the rest of the season. At the very least, you got to shove the guy and say, hey, that's not cool. So for, early on, Larkin gets thrown into the boards and Bertuzzi's jumping on a guy coming into the scene. You want to see that. That's a good development from last year to this year. Obviously, like Nolan said, keep it in check. And like you said, too. But I like to see it at this point. I hope to not have to see it for the rest of the season.
Excellent.
To
Excellent
touch
analogy.
on that, the point I just kind of made about the no slash or no reaction to the slash on Lucas Raymond, like the thing that not rubbed me the wrong way, but the thing I found curious about it was that like Sam Gagner went over there and was like, hey, you back off. And I almost think that's worse in a lot of ways, because guess what? Matthew Tkachuk at the third period, guess what he was doing? Swinging some more lumber. And so, you got to do something when the moment is there, and they handled everything in that regard. So it was kind of mystifying to me.
Yeah. I completely agree with both of you. And I got to say that for my 2 cents, for what it's worth, I love it and I hate it for the exact same reasons that you both mentioned. You love it for the fact that they're finally stepping up for their teammates. They're showing this grit that they haven't had for the last few seasons. And, you want to see that. You want to see them stepping in, helping out their teammates. Also need to see it a little more. Like you said, Nolan, when they're hacking your 19-year-old superstar, you can't just go over, hey, please don't do that. You got to
Sam Gagner of all people.
You give them,
he's not dropping the gloves.
No, but at least face wash them, something like make it seem like you're going to do something. I always hated that, as a defenseman, like whenever someone gave extra shove to my goalie, I made sure to put a hand on them, just to let them know, like, I'm not going to let that slide, and I'm not going to let you have a free pass, to my players in the zone. And I think that's the message that needs to be sent. Now, on the other side of that, it has to get corralled and be brought in a bit. And so I think the scope of this is going to come down to what can Jeff Blashill do. And this is going to prove that he has full control of this team. If he can reel this in and get them to say, hey, we want to play with this grit, we want to play with this scrappiness, but it has to be done at the proper intervals. That's going to show that this is his team 100%. So I'm going to leave it at that right now. We're going to take a quick break and just thank you all for watching our show. Give us a like, follow, subscribe on the Hockey Writers channel on YouTube. We're also on Spotify and iHeartRadio. And we have so many good shows, including Blackhawks Banter, Sabres Scoop, Chicks and Sticks, and one of our favorite sister shows, Howlers and Growlers. So follow us on Twitter, sign up for our Morning Skate newsletter at morningskate.io to get your best hockey news delivered to you for free to your inbox every weekday. That's right. For free to your inbox every weekday. Sign up. We will get it to you. And, if you want us to steal your box of stationery and fax it to you from from yourself in the future, giving you all your hockey news, we will do that. We will get it to you a la Dwight Schrute style, and we will get you that hockey news any way that you want it. So thank you again. We appreciate the follows, the likes, and all the comments. And going off of that, we're going to start with our other favorite segment, comment corner. And we have 2 comments today that we're going to get to. And the first one, it comes from Katz Kulo Jackson. And Katz asks, what are your thoughts on winning the Shane Wright lottery? That's a lot of words that I'm going to stumble over. So let me try that again. What are your thoughts on winning the Shane Wright lottery and heading into the offseason with a ton of cap space? Dylan, I'm mixing up your names. Nolan, let's start with you. Devin, I'm thinking you're Dylan Larkin again. I don't know what's going on. That's 2 weeks in a row.
I'm not counting on it, but I have like the dumbest, I just have like the most stupid stereotypical male sports brain. So like, I'm like, okay, I stop believing that they're going to win the lottery. And then there's a voice that in the back of my head goes, that probably means they're going to win the lottery. And then, and I have to choose which voice to listen to. And all it is a reversal of what it has been in years past of they could win the lottery this year, when in the back of my mind, I couldn't even enjoy the prospect of that because I would know there would be that little voice going, come on, dude, you know, they're not going to win the lottery. But seeing the Pistons do it this year inspired me. I don't know. I mean, it's a long shot by any stretch of the imagination. I don't think this team is going to be a bottom 3 team in the league at the end of the year. And so you're going to need a lot of luck, but I don't know. Maybe I do think, and maybe it's just because I saw it happen with the Pistons, but I do think like there's something to be said for teams that are trying and you kind of make your own luck in a way.
Sure.
And, it would be very, very exciting. Like with that said, because there's probably some guys out there who, and I honestly have not taken too much of a gander at the UFA class of 2022, but given the way that the salary cap is going to continue to be structured, I would not be surprised if there are a couple guys out there who do take a bridge deal, wait for that cap to go up. Do we know when that cap is supposed to go up? Or
starting next season, it's supposed to go up by $1 million until the escrow is paid back by the players. So
nothing.
Yeah. 82.5 next season. That is what we know.
We got one Giovanni Smith.
Yes.
So like with all that in mind, I think it's exciting because I think you're going to see a lot of smart plays by Steve Yzerman. I think, you're going to be able to go into the offseason knowing, all right, we can go after this guy and this guy. And this is something I advocated for this offseason as well. But just go ahead and overpay a couple guys to be here for a year or two. Precedent be damned darn. I don't know if you're allowed to say that. But like, if you have the cap space and you want to do something, why not do it? I was very tongue in cheek with this, but I was like, give Gabriel Landeskog $16 million this year, and or give Elias Pettersson, make him an offer sheet for $15 million 1 year, and then address the rest of his deal accordingly. But just like to get him away, and I think like. This is why I'm not a GM. But at the same time, it's like there are going to be plays out there that are available to you to get really good hockey players on your team outside of the standard. Oh, well, this guy's 27. We're going to have to sign him for 7x7. Like those aren't the only types of really good players you can find in free agency. And I think Steve Yzerman, I mean, I'd be a moron to say if I was not excited about him having that much cap room, because he will get crafty. He will be smart with it. And that no matter what move he makes, it's not going to kill this team when it comes to pay or when it comes time to pay Mo Sider, Lucas Raymond, guys like that. So I honestly, it sounds like homerism or whatever you want to call it. I could have nothing but optimism for this hockey team over these next couple of seasons. And that's because it hasn't gotten hard, right? Like there's still low expectations, but at the end of the day, I think like this is going to be a really exciting couple of years. The next calendar year is going to be a great time in Hockey Town.
Oh, absolutely. I completely agree. And I was on board with the whole throw some money at Gabriel Landeskog this summer. I thought that would have been a fun little interesting piece to have added this year. And why not? We had the room. But yeah, no, I agree with all your points there, Nolan. Thank you. Devin, over to you. What do you think? Your thoughts on winning the Shane Wright lottery and what that means going into next season with all that cap space?
Well, I want to start by saying that when you were paying the bills, I imagine that Pat had like a weird tingle go down his spine that he doesn't understand why quite yet. But he will.
I hope
He'll
he
understand.
does. I hope he does.
I feel the sudden urge to do an ad read. Anyways, speaking of making money, we know that the Red Wings are going to have a bunch of cap space. That is a fact. We don't have to like fantasize about that. That is going to be a thing. The thing that we have to fantasize about is getting Shane Wright in the draft lottery. Now the question asked, let's think about it. So let's think about it. If the Red Wings are able to add Shane Wright, they basically have added their franchise center of the future. They've got Edvinsson and Seider in the back. That's your defensive pillars for the foreseeable future. Theoretically, you've got Sebastian Cossa as your goaltender of the future. You've now got Lucas Raymond, which is your winger superstar of the future. And you've got Shane Wright as your cornerstone piece. I think you've got more or less your team built at that point. Holy cow. And then you got all this money that you have to spend just to reach the cap floor. There are going to be some interesting names, or at least I think there are going to be some interesting names out in the free agent market this coming year. A lot of left-handed defensemen, which the Wings are set to lose Leddy and De Kaiser and Stahl next year, unless they resign one or some of them. And I would not.
Please only Leddy.
But I would not be surprised to see them make a run at a guy like Morgan Rielly. We've talked about him before. I would not be surprised to see them make a run at Hampus Lindholm over in Anaheim. That would not only would they be adding Shane Wright, which is a long-term thing, but then they'd be adding a defenseman, a top 4 defenseman that then kind of solidifies what the decor is once you add Edvinsson as well, not to mention all the other defensive prospects that are in the system. So, this is when it gets really exciting to be at this point in the rebuild, because you know that the pieces are falling into place and you have money that you have to spend to fill in the other gaps.
And you don't have a bad contract on the books yet.
Right.
Exactly.
Right. That's the biggest thing, I think.
The biggest thing for me is just that, if you win the Shane Wright lottery, that's when the fun begins, because then you just start spending money and you start putting your pieces in place.
And if they don't win the Shane Wright lottery, like the kind of guy I'm talking about, and this is going to sound kind of crazy, but an Evgeny Malkin or a Claude Giroux or somebody like that instantly, oh my God, we have we have Dylan Larkin and Evgeny Malkin going. Like, if you're saying that heading into the season, I think you have a pretty good deal of optimism about what you can accomplish. And that's not a signing that hamstrings the team at all. Look at what Joe Pavelski did in his old age for the Dallas Stars in the year that they went to the Cup. And even last season, he was a power play goal machine. I feel like he scored like 15 goals against the Red Wings last year. So to me, along with the defenseman, go after one of these older, high-profile free agents that can still play. And who cares if you overpay him? It really does not matter.
I think you're right. And with the fact that the Red Wings don't have any of those really bad contracts on the books, I think it's safe to do that for one player. If it's for a season or two, you can have one bad contract on the books. If it's for a season or two, it's really not going to hurt you that bad. And especially if it's a type of player that could be flipped at the deadline if things don't quite go the right way that season.
Always retain money.
Always retain money and always take extra draft picks, right?
Yep.
So my thoughts on the Shane Wright lottery is, we talked about this on this podcast quite a few times. We want this team to be kind of in that purgatory state this year, sitting in the teens within the rankings. Like they're not quite a playoff team, although they've looked really good this year, but they're not quite a bottom feeder team either. And we don't necessarily, at least I don't necessarily want to see them as one of the bottom feeder teams going for that lottery. As much as I wanted them to be in the hunt for the lottery this year or even next year because of what type of talent is coming up through the draft, I would much rather see the team competing and being closer to that playoff spot than that lottery spot. So, as much as I would love to get a Shane Wright or a Connor Bedard or a Mitchkoff or whomever, in honesty, I would rather them go after one of those Malkins or Landeskog's or those types of short-term, bigger type contracts than hope for the lottery this season. So that's my thoughts on that. Thank you, Katz, for that question. That's always fun to think about. We would love to get a lottery, but like Nolan said, you can't let yourself think that, because as soon as you do, in the words of Ted Lasso, the hope is what will kill you. So moving on, Zachary asks, should Detroit pursue Dylan Strome or Vitaly Kravtsov? Both are young players. Strome is a 6'3" center, 24 years old, and Kravtsov is a 6'3" right winger who is 21 years old. Should Detroit pursue either of these two players who are currently in disputes with their teams, whether it's contractual or playing time, and are getting floated around as potential trade options? Nolan, over to you.
I don't really think it can ever hurt to take a run at a guy like this, especially because, I mean, like they're not, I don't know, like the Kravtsov thing, he kind of a little bit has forced their hand a little bit. I don't know how much leverage they have in that situation, but I do know that, there are plenty of mid-round picks that the Red Wings are going to be able to like wheel and deal. Like this is to me like a time to start wheeling and dealing, get some, give some, like kind of in that range. And I think Kravtsov, a guy like Dylan Strome, those are two guys who, it hasn't really worked out. Dylan Strome, I might be a little more hesitant on just because he has bounced around from a couple different teams, and that gives me a little bit of pause. And how many different teams can say, man, Dylan Strome, third overall pick, or whatever he was. And, but I think Kravtsov's a little bit of a different story because we haven't really seen him a lot at the NHL level. And I think there could be if you're going to take a swing on anybody, I would rather take somebody with a higher upside. And I'm not saying that Dylan Strome can't be effective in this league. And he actually has been somewhat effective. He's over a half point per game player, but at the end of the day, is that what you need? Do you need a Dylan Strome? I don't necessarily think so. I don't think it can hurt if you're only giving up, a third round pick or whatever it may be, especially because Chicago is going to have some cap things to work out in the very, very near future. So they might be looking to, get some guys out of there. But I think Kravtsov's probably your better choice at this juncture. Younger too.
Yeah. 3 years younger. Excellent point on that. And the Wings seem to be, pretty set down the middle right now. I mean, we have Mitchell Stevens down there. We have a lot of guys that can fill in, if there's another injury up at, Suter or Larkin. And the Red Wings just picked up Suter from the Blackhawks, and Dylan Strome's a very similar player. He's a little bit bigger, but at the same time, like you said, he's bounced around quite a bit. So there's obviously something there that's kind of kept him from catching on with a team. So I think, to your point, exactly, the right wing is the spot that would need more of an immediate impact player like a Kravtsov, as opposed to taking a Strome down the road. And also with those extra 3 years and that smaller sample size, there is the chance that he could explode more onto the NHL scene in the future. Devin, your thoughts on going after Dylan Strome or Vitaly Kravtsov?
A couple of things real quick before I actually dive into this. One, the Red Wings have enough center depth that Joe Veleno is playing against the Manitoba Moose tonight instead of the Montreal
I forgot
Canadiens
Veleno's
tomorrow.
name in that little rant I just went on. So
they're not necessarily hurting to get a center right now. They're hurting to figure out where to fit Veleno in. And then the other thing is, I actually just wrote an article about why the Red Wings should consider going after Kravtsov. So instead of spending too much time on him, go ahead and check that article out.
That's veteran move right there.
Yeah. But I'll spend the rest of this talking about Strome. If you watch our sister show, Blackhawks Banter, There's a couple things that they talk about when they talk about Dylan Strome. One, he's not playing right now, and they do think that he's kind of being wasted in that he's not playing. But they also say that he doesn't really do much unless he's playing next to Alex DeBrincat. And the Red Wings aren't going to be getting Alex DeBrincat in this deal unless they pull out some crazy blockbuster that's going to feature a lot of different moving pieces. That's just not going to happen. And furthermore, if you're getting a player that needs to be playing with another player in order to be effective, I don't want that player. I mean, point blank. I will say I'm interested in both players because, I always look back at the Robbie Fabry move a couple years ago and a guy who was just kind of buried by depth on his former team. And then he gets shipped off to Detroit where he gets an actual opportunity and then he flourishes. I think that both these guys kind of fit that description, maybe a little different, but I think there's upside here. And I think that both guys, you're going to be paying pennies on the dollar of what you would normally. So theoretically, if you could bring either of them in and get them in a position to succeed, even if it's not a long-term ad, you can, coach them up, let them have success, and then trade them for what they're actually worth.
Yeah.
So I'm not against either move. I will say I'm definitely more in favor of Kravtsov over Strome, but depending on the price, I wouldn't write off Strome either.
Yeah, absolutely. If the price is right, if you're getting these players pennies on the dollar, they're both good players to have in the depth position on your roster. Absolutely. Nolan, anything to add with this final comment about Strome or Kravtsov? I know you just kind of touched on it, but any last words?
No, I mean, I think you make a really good point with the center depth for sure. And I think the thing that gives me pause about Strome is he kind of reminds me of a Mantha, where like there's always like you hear from Blackhawks people like, man, if he can get it, if I'm telling like hopefully this is the year, and it's like I don't want to watch another player like that. I understand that not all of them are created equal. Dylan Strome could end up being a guy who thrives somewhere.
Absolutely.
But for like if we're just doing a comparison or pick 'em between these two players, like the Strome he reminds me of an Anthony Mantha type, and I gotta be honest, I'm really over there's going to be plenty of them that come through this team over the years, but like I just something about watching players that I know aren't living up to what they could be annoys the hell out of me. So
and they don't fit the Iser plan, right? You gotta meet your potential or you're on your way out. So absolutely. Well, gentlemen, thank you so much. And thank you for listening. That is our show for today. We just want to take a moment. Thank you again for joining us. Please give us a like, a subscribe, a follow, a comment, a share. Drop those comments down below on our YouTube page or follow us on Twitter at THW Grindline. Leave us a comment. We love to answer questions on our show, and we love to interact with you on Twitter and within the comments on YouTube as well. Also, please follow Nolan at Nolan Bianchi, on Twitter. And again, thank you. And we might be off next week. We're not 100% sure, but we will let you know in the comments. Thank you and have a great week.